The auditorium lights dimmed, and a hush fell over the crowd as a small boy, no more than 12, walked nervously onto the vast stage. His figure seemed almost swallowed by the towering curtains, the blinding spotlights, and the sheer size of the arena. Unlike other contestants who arrived in glittering costumes and radiated confidence, he wore a plain shirt and trousers, his hands trembling slightly as he clutched his guitar. His wide eyes darted across the audience before quickly dropping to the floor. It was clear that the weight of the moment pressed heavily upon him. The judges shifted in their seats. Some leaned forward with curiosity, others exchanged doubtful glances. Could such a young boy truly do justice to a legendary song like Hotel California? The challenge was monumental. The murmurs in the audience only added to the pressure, whispers of skepticism, of doubt, of dismissal. Backstage, his mother stood with her hands clasped tightly, silently mouthing prayers. She knew the hardships her son had endured to stand here today. Nights spent practicing by candlelight when the electricity bill went unpaid, days of ridicule from classmates who mocked his big dreams, and evenings where he sang on street corners just to collect enough coins for food. Every sacrifice, every tear, every moment of perseverance had led to this single chance. When he finally adjusted the microphone, his breathing was shaky, but there was a fire in his eyes, hidden beneath the fear, that no one could deny. The crowd grew still, sensing something extraordinary was about to happen. He closed his eyes, strummed the haunting opening chords, and let the first note escape his lips. It wasn't just a sound, it was a cry from the depths of his soul. For the first time, the restless audience leaned in, captivated. They weren't just listening to a boy sing, they were hearing the story of a life, woven into melody. The first few words of Hotel California fell from the boy's lips like fragile whispers, uncertain yet filled with a raw sincerity. At first, the crowd listened politely, but something remarkable began to unfold. His voice, though untrained, carried a weight that resonated far beyond his age. Each lyric trembled with vulnerability yet rang with undeniable truth. The skeptical glances of the judges softened. They leaned forward, caught off guard by the depth of emotion radiating from this small figure on stage. The song, a classic loved by generations, suddenly felt reborn through him. It wasn't just the words, it was the way he delivered them. The sadness, the longing, the haunting story of the song became a mirror for his own struggles. Listeners could hear the hunger he had endured, the loneliness of a boy who dreamed against all odds, the courage of a soul that refused to surrender. Every crack in his voice added authenticity, each trembling note reminding everyone that this wasn't just performance, it was life. The audience, once restless, fell completely silent. The kind of silence that only comes when something extraordinary is happening. Even the backstage crew, usually busy with cables and cameras, paused to listen. For those few minutes, the boy commanded a power that few seasoned artists ever touch, the power to still hearts, to make strangers feel deeply connected. By the time he reached the chorus, a shift had taken place in the auditorium. People who had doubted him were now leaning on the edge of their seats, eyes wide, some already misty. The judges glanced at one another, their skepticism shattered. The boy was no longer a nervous child on stage, he was a storyteller, a vessel for something greater than himself. And his voice carried the weight of dreams long ignored, demanding to be heard. Halfway through the song, something changed. The boy, who had kept his eyes closed in fear, finally lifted them and scanned the crowd. For the first time, he allowed himself to see the thousands of faces staring back at him. His gaze found his mother at the side of the stage. Tears glistened on her cheeks, and the moment their eyes met, a surge of courage filled him. His voice, once fragile, now soared. Memories flooded his mind, nights when dinner never came, the humiliation of classmates who laughed at his torn shoes, the long hours on cold sidewalks singing for coins while people walked past as if he were invisible. But now, in this one moment, none of that pain was wasted. Every hardship became fuel for his song, every scar turned into strength. He poured all of it into the lyrics, as though he was no longer singing Hotel California but his very own life story. The audience felt it. They weren't just hearing music, they were experiencing his heart laid bare. His guitar strings echoed like cries of resilience, each note sharper, more powerful, more alive. When he reached the instrumental bridge, his small fingers moved across the strings with surprising mastery, pulling sound from the guitar that seemed impossible for someone his age. The crowd erupted into cheers, but he didn't falter. He was no longer performing for approval, he was singing to survive, to be heard, to finally claim his worth. As he sang the final haunting words, the last note hung in the air like a prayer. For a breathless moment, silence swallowed the room. Then came the roar, applause, whistles, cheers so loud they shook the hall. Strangers wiped away tears, holding their chests as if to keep their hearts from breaking. He had not just sung a song, he had given them his soul. When the final chord faded, the boy froze. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths as he clutched the guitar against him. For a second, doubt crept back in, had he done enough? But then, one by one, the judges rose to their feet. Their applause thundered across the hall, drowning out his fear. One judge, her voice trembling, leaned into her microphone. "I haven't cried like this in years," she admitted, mascara streaking down her face. "That wasn't just a performance, that was a gift. You've changed something inside all of us tonight." Another judge, usually stern and unmoved, simply wiped his eyes and said, "This is why we do this show. To find voices like yours that remind us what music really means." The audience, already on their feet, chanted his name in unison. For a boy who had spent much of his life feeling unseen, it was overwhelming. He looked toward his mother as she rushed onto the stage, tears streaming down her face, and wrapped him in the tightest embrace. She whispered against his ear, "You've made me proud beyond words." He buried his face in her shoulder, finally allowing himself to cry. Then came the moment that sealed everything. A judge slammed the golden buzzer. A split second later, a burst of golden confetti rained down from above, swirling in the air like stardust. The boy's eyes widened in disbelief as the sparkling shower surrounded him. The crowd's cheers grew even louder, echoing like a storm of joy. For years, he had been ignored, underestimated, treated as if his dreams were too big for him. Now, in this single, dazzling moment, the world recognized his worth. The confetti settled gently around him, clinging to his hair and shoulders, while the audience's cheers refused to die down. The boy stood in awe, staring at his trembling hands, the same hands that had once strummed on a broken guitar in the streets for coins, now celebrated on one of the biggest stages in the world. His dream, once mocked and dismissed, had just taken flight. The judges promised him guidance, opportunities, and a future in music. Reporters backstage were already preparing headlines. Boy's Hotel California performance brings the world to tears. Within hours, his audition would be online, spreading across social media like wildfire, touching millions of strangers who would see themselves in his struggle and triumph. He would soon be called the boy with the voice of a soul twice his age. Yet in that moment, fame didn't matter to him. What mattered was the quiet, tender look on his mother's face as she sat with him after the show. Away from the lights, away from the cameras, they shared a silence filled with pride, relief, and love. She held his hand, the same way she had when he was just a little boy singing lullabies in their tiny home. No words were needed, they both knew this was only the beginning. The boy whispered softly, almost to himself, "We made it, Mama." His voice cracked, but it was no longer with fear, it was with hope. Outside, the world waited eagerly for his next song, his next performance, his next story. But inside, he had already won. He had proved that dreams born in struggle could rise to the brightest lights. And as he smiled through the glitter still resting on his shoulders, one truth was clear: music had given him wings, and now he was ready to soar.